Chips! Hey everyone! Here's Bogdan from Ship Studios. Today, I'll be showing you how we made this short animation in Blender 3.0. So, here we are in Blender. We can just start up with the general setup, and what I'll do first, I'll activate my hotkeys displayer so you can see it on the bottom left of the screen, what I usually press when I do some actions in Blender. So keep an eye on that one if you ever get stuck. First, we're going to delete the default cube, then we're going to create an icosphere. Be careful about this, let's make it an icosphere and not a UV sphere, elsewise it's gonna glitch up a bit later. We can leave the settings of the sphere as they are, and we're going to apply a subdivision surface modifier to it. We're gonna set the levels up to 3 for render view and viewport view, and then right mouse button, shade smooth. Now we can take the level down to 1 for the viewport. And what I like to do first usually is I'll just create another folder for my camera and lights. So we go to Scene, Collections, create a new collection, and let's call it Camera and Lights. Then I want to show this little arrow for each collection. It's the one for selectable. So if it's filled out, it means I can select any element from this collection, and if it's not, well, then you cannot select anything from that collection. Then I'll be going to front view and we'll be creating in the first collection a cube. Let's make it a bit bigger than the sphere, and then we'll apply the scale with Ctrl A. Now we are going into edit mode, and then I'd like to select just this front face. And let's go to face mode by pressing 3. And then I'll be selecting this front face, and let's right click, subdivide, and I think that 10 should be just enough for what we need. Then I press I for inset, and the trick here is that I want a really small amount and will be pressing on individual. So like every little space that we have right now after subdividing will get subdivided on itself, just a tiny bit amount. Yeah, just like this. And then we can go to the side and I'll press J on the y-axis so that we can drag them. I'd like to drag them as close as possible to the edge. So we're going to wireframe, and then I'll be slowly dragging them by holding shift so that I don't move too fast at once. And I want them to get as close to the edge, but they shouldn't be touching the edge, or there would be some weird glitching happening. This is how it looks right now, and we'll be needing just a bit more adjustment here. Now we want to rotate the cube on the z-axis by 90 degrees, and from front view we are going to be dragging it a bit to the left, just like this. That's a great position. And then from the tools panel, by pressing N, we'll be getting the Bool Tool. If you don't have it already applied, you can get it from the preferences, edit preferences, add-ons, and just activate it. We'll be selecting both, and then we're going for difference. Slowly drag it, and it looks weird, right? This happens mostly because of the lack of geometry in our object, since, as you remember, we put the subdivision surface down to 1. And it's also because of the shade smoothing. But don't worry, we can actually solve it this way. We go to the vertices tab, and under normal, we have to check auto smooth, and here we go. As you can see, smooth as a baby butt, and you don't have to modify anything else. The angle is perfect, and now we can move on. Now what I would like to do, I will remove the brush so we can actually duplicate this cube and still see it perfectly, because we'd like more versions of it. different angles that we can make to interact with the sphere. Let's do one to the right and then we rotate it on the z-axis 180 degrees. And then on the y-axis, and let's get it a bit up and just move it a bit around, maybe make it a bit smaller or even bigger so that we have a bit of a variation when it comes to sizes. And then we take another one. Let's see, where should I put this one? Okay, let's put this one on the upper side. You can actually play around with this. You don't have to put them in the exact position that I'm putting them on. I'm just reaching through to what I designed before. Let's give it a bit of a angle. And then we can actually duplicate this one. Let's move it downwards, and now we have to rotate it back so that the holes actually go through to the sphere. And let's change a bit the angle so that we have some more variation for this one. Like I said, this part is mostly creative, so you can change it around a bit. You don't have to follow exactly what I did. And what we're gonna do right now is connect each as an intersect brush with the Bool tool. So I'm testing this one from the left, and then we're going with the upper one. I'm just testing them out to see if they work properly, and sometimes you get some glitches because of the geometry that you are using, and I'm trying not to get any in so that we have a clean animation. Now this side on the bottom, and yeah, everything works just fine. Now on to the next phase. Now let's try to add some materials to them. So first of all, let's go with the sphere. Let's make a new material. You can call it whatever. And now we can change the color. We can play around with the specular and maybe with the roughness a bit. This is once again up to you. You don't have to follow exactly my rules. Usually at this point, I actually just experiment with a bit with the design phase. Let's keep a low roughness so we have more light. And then I like to be able to use again the camera and lights because one light just seems a little bit odd. I'd like a bit of light to come from below. So I'll duplicate this one and then I'll pull it down from the front. And let's see. We can just adjust it a bit later. What I usually do is go through the camera angle and then adjust it from there, since this will be my angle of view. Let's change a bit the naming. It's again, you don't have to, but I'm just a freak when it comes to organizing stuff, it seems. And what I also like to do is to play around with the lights a bit. Like the one from the bottom, I would like it to be a bit less powerful because usually you don't expect light to come from the bottom. It's gonna be more like a rim light or a reflection light that you're seeing right now. You can move it around a bit, make it less powerful. You can even give it a color if you'd like. What I'm trying to accomplish here is I like to have a band of shadow. Yes, this should be pretty good. Then actually I think I'll change the color to something a bit yellowish to orange. Yeah, this feels good. Okay, and now that we have a material for our icosphere, now we can block again the camera and lights, and we can get out of the material tab, and right now we'll be going through the animation process. It's not gonna be something very hard. We are gonna be putting in just two keyframes for each animation. So we'll be having every 60 frames, two keyframes for each one. So the first one would go 1 to 60 and the second one is 60 to 120 and so on with the other two. I myself chose to go with left, top, bottom and right, but you can play around with it. Like I said, you can change the angles or the size of the cubes, but be careful not to make them too small, because if you make them too small, they are gonna be looking weird on the sphere. They are not gonna cover the entire sphere, and the animation is gonna look incomplete or glitchy. So keep it at least a bit bigger than the icosphere just to be sure. And then you can play around with the angles. You can even create your custom shapes if you'd like. As for the render, you can actually render it as a video, but I actually don't recommend so. I usually render them as a PNG sequence because it's much easier to go back if one or two frames were glitchy and replace them with, let's say, two new images instead of doing the whole animation all over again. Remember to save your file. I actually did this tutorial a couple of times before, so I'm prepared for this one. So yeah, I forgot to save it at first. But always do remember to save your file, and especially if you're gonna be doing something that it's gonna be taxing on your PC, like rendering or maybe doing simulations. So I do recommend to save as many times as possible just to make sure you don't want to work on a project for 20 minutes hardcore and then realize that you didn't save anything. And you can also actually set up some autosaves from the preferences tab, so do that. Now we're finished with the bottom one, and then we are going with the right one. And this one is a little bit trickier because it's a bit of an angle, so you have to make sure that you cover the sphere in every frame. You can jiggle a bit, but it's gonna be calculated by Blender, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, that seems to be the main keyframes. Let's Save again. And now let's take a look how it would animate. This is gonna be a bit in slow motion because Blender can't really play it at the same speed that it would be usually. But it actually helps. You can see if there are any errors because it's going way slower than usually. Remember that each action that every cube does here is gonna last just 2 seconds. So it's only 8 seconds of animation. Okay, looks good. And now what we could do, actually, let's take a look in the render view. I'd like to see the animation with the shadows and the lights and the material on. And I think we'll go for 128 in the render view. And what we can also do, we can actually change a bit the shadows option for the render, so we can make them at a higher resolution. So usually the higher the resolution, the better the shadow quality is gonna be, but it's also gonna be costing more on your render time, so be careful with that one. I'll set them to K for each of these, and also check the high bit depth and soft shadows. And what we can actually also do, if you'd like, you can go to the lights and you can set some contact shadows. I really don't think you need to at this point, but if you feel like it, go ahead, have some fun with it. I think this is good enough. It looks really good. If you feel that I didn't explain something properly in the video, feel free to leave a comment down below in the section and I'll answer you as soon as possible. Now, there is actually one more thing that we could do to improve a bit the quality of our animation, or let's say not really quality, but more like the timing of our animation. You can select the keyframes for each animation, and if you go to keyframe interpolation by pressing right click, then I will go for quadratic. You can play around with those. The timing of the animation is gonna change for each one, and I'd like a bit more impact on the animation side so that we have a smooth and fast animation in the end, since it's a short one, just 8 seconds, and with some pauses in between. So yeah, this is what I'm going for. You can choose whichever you want, and I recommend you to preview it, and then we're actually ready to render. Just be sure to save before you render and choose a path for the video or the PNG sequence to save to, and then we're good to go. So here's the final result. I hope you all enjoyed it, and this is gonna be it for today. If you did enjoy it, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment down in the section below. It really helps for the algorithm, and we'll be back with some more new tutorials soon. That's it. Bye.